The ships came down from the sky on a Tuesday morning. Alara Vance remembered this because she had been drinking her coffee and watching the sunrise. When the shadows fell across the city, she was a naval engineer then, working at a shipyard in San Diego, building submarines for a navy that would soon mean nothing. The alien vessels were beautiful in a cold way. They looked like silver knives cutting through the clouds. There were hundreds of them, hanging in the air without sound, without movement, just waiting. The whole world stopped to look up. First contact with alien life? Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries. Scientists had imagined friendly beings who would share knowledge and welcome Earth into a community of stars. Writers had imagined wars and invasions. Neither group had imagined what actually happened. The Velothians did not come to make war. They did not come to make friends. They came to do something far worse. They came to sort humanity into a category and forget about them. The Galactic. Concordat had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had conquered or absorbed over 300 species. They had a system for everything, including new civilizations. When the Velothian ambassador materialized in the United Nations building, he looked at the gathered leaders of Earth with eyes that held no curiosity, no wonder, no interest at all. He was tall and covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. His voice came out flat and mechanical, translated by a device floating near his throat. "We have studied your species for 17 of your solar rotations," he announced. "Your technology is primitive. Your social structures are chaotic. Your planet has limited strategic value." He paused and checked something on a device wrapped around his wrist. Classification complete. Species designation: human. Labor viability: acceptable. Tier assignment: subsistence. Work category: reclamation. The leaders of Earth tried to negotiate. They tried to argue. They tried to fight. None of it mattered. The Concordat did not negotiate with labor species. They did not argue. And fighting was simply not possible against ships that could turn cities to glass with a single beam of light. 3 million humans were selected for transport. They were chosen based on age, health, and useful skills. Alara was taken because she knew how to build things. Her husband was left behind because he was a teacher. And the Concordat had no use for teachers. She never saw him again. The transport ships were not designed for comfort. Humans were packed into cargo holds like products being shipped to a warehouse. The journey took 3 weeks. Many people died during the trip. The Velothians did not seem to notice or care. When the ships finally landed, Alara stepped out onto the surface of Waste Processing Colony, 7 Theta, and felt her heart break. It was a moon circling a red dwarf star that was slowly dying. The sky was the color of rust. The air was thin and tasted like metal. The ground was covered in mountains and valleys, but they were not made of rock. They were made of garbage. Broken ships stretched to the horizon. Cracked engines the size of buildings lay half-buried in toxic soil. Weapons that no longer fired, computers that no longer thought, vehicles that no longer moved. The Concordat had been dumping their trash here for centuries. Every failed experiment, every outdated machine, every broken piece of equipment from 1,000 conquered worlds had been dropped on this moon and forgotten. And now, humanity's job was to sort through it all. The work was backbreaking and dangerous. Humans had to climb through unstable piles of alien wreckage, identify metals and materials that could be recycled, and load them into containers for transport. The air filters they were given barely worked. The food was a gray paste that tasted like nothing. The housing was converted cargo containers, stacked in rows. The Concordat expected human workers to last about 4 years before their bodies cave out from the toxic environment and brutal labor. They'd calculated this carefully. For years was enough time to extract value from each worker before they needed to be replaced. It was efficient. Alara watched her people suffer, and something cold and hard began to grow inside her chest. She had been an engineer her whole life. She had solved problems, built solutions, created things that worked. She looked at the mountains of alien scrap surrounding her, and she began to think. The Concordat saw garbage. They saw the failures and mistakes of their empire. things to be processed and forgotten. But Alara saw something different. She saw a Krethvari plasma conduit that had been thrown away because it overheated. She saw a solenoid cooling system that had been discarded because it was too slow. Separately, they were failures. Together, they might be something else entirely. She started small. She found other engineers, other scientists, other people who still had the spark of curiosity in their eyes, despite everything that had been done to them. They met in secret, in the shadows of dead warships, hidden from the drones that watched the colony. The Concordat keeps their technologies separate, Ilara explained to the small group. They never mix designs from different species. They think it would contaminate the purity of their systems. A man named Marcus Chen, who had been a professor at MIT before the invasion, nodded slowly. But that means they have never explored what happens when you combine them. Exactly. Alara held up a damaged circuit board she had pulled from a wrecked shuttle. They threw this away because it did not work the way they wanted. But what if we do not care what they wanted? What if we just want to know what it can do? The group grew slowly over the following months. They had to be careful. The Concordat did not tolerate rebellion. But they also did not watch very closely. Why would they? Humans were just labor units working until they died, easily replaced by the next shipment. That arrogance was a gift. Ilara began organizing her people into teams. During the day, they sorted scrap like good workers. At night, they studied it. They took apart machines and learned how they functioned. They read data from broken computers. They tested components and wrote down results in hidden notebooks. The Concordat had given them the garbage of 100 civilizations. Technologies that had failed, weapons that had broken, shields that had cracked. To the Concordat, it was all worthless junk to be processed. To humanity, it was a school. And they were very eager students. Alara stood on a ridge one night, looking out over the endless fields of alien wreckage. The dying star painted everything in shades of red. Somewhere out there, Earth was still spinning, still full of people who did not know what had happened to the 3 million who had been taken. She made a promise to herself. She would find a way back. She would make the Concordat regret throwing humanity into their garbage pile. She did not know how yet, but she knew that somewhere in these mountains of scrap was the answer. She just had to build it. 18 months passed on the surface of 7 Theta. The Concordat inspectors came every 3 months, walking through the colony with their scanning devices, checking productivity numbers, counting the living and the dead. They always left satisfied. The humans were meeting their quotas. Everything was working as expected. What they did not see was happening underground. The moon was full of tunnels and caves. Natural formations created millions of years ago when the rock was still hot. Alara had found them during her first month, when she had been mapping the scrap fields. She had kept them secret, even from most of the other humans. They were too valuable to risk. Now those caves held a city. They called it the Forge. It had started as a single cavern where Ilara and her team stored the interesting pieces they'd found during their work. Now it stretched for miles beneath the surface, lit by salvaged reactor cores that glowed soft blue in the darkness. Thousands of humans worked down there, building things that should not exist. The key to everything was combination. The Concordat designed their technology in isolation. Each species they conquered had their own engineering principles, and the Concordat kept those principles separate. A Velothian ship used only Velothian systems. A Krethvari weapon used only Krethvari components. Mixing technologies was considered primitive and inefficient. Humans did not care about what was considered proper. They cared about what worked. Marcus Chen had become the head of their research division. He spent his days studying broken shield generators, trying to understand the mathematics behind them. One night, he came running to Alara with wild eyes and shaking hands. "I found something," he said, barely able to speak from excitement. "The Velothian shields operate on specific frequencies." They threw away an entire batch of generators because those frequencies were considered obsolete. Alara frowned. Why would frequencies become obsolete? Because the Concordat deleted all the weapons that could defeat them. Marcus laughed, the sound echoing through the cave. They decided those weapons were unnecessary, so they erased the knowledge. They have not been able to counter these shield frequencies for 300 years because they forgot how. This was how it went. Discovery after discovery. The Concordat threw away things that did not fit their current systems, never considering that their current systems might not be perfect, but humans had no loyalty to Concordat methods. They had no traditions to maintain, no purity to protect. They just wanted to survive. Yuki Tanaka had been a systems engineer in Tokyo. Now she led the weapons team, working in a cavern filled with damaged cannons and targeting arrays. She had spent 6 months trying to repair a Ravith-class destroyer's main gun. The targeting system was broken beyond repair, so she replaced it. She took targeting software from a Yothian fighter, navigation algorithms from a Selenoid explorer, and sensor arrays from a crashed Velothian scout. None of these systems were designed to work together. The Concordat would have said it was impossible. Why UKI? It's made it work anyway. The resulting weapon could track targets through subspace distortions. It could predict enemy movement 3 seconds into the future. It could hit a ship that was actively trying to dodge. When she tested it on a chunk of asteroid, the beam cut through solid rock like it was paper. But the greatest discovery came from Alara. She had been exploring a crashed science vessel, one of the oldest wrecks in the scrap fields. The ship had been dead for centuries, its hull cracked open to the poisoned sky. Most of the systems were completely destroyed, but deep in the core of the vessel, protected by layers of armor, she found something still alive. It was an artificial intelligence, a neural lattice brain designed to control shipyard operations. It had been created to optimize construction, to make building ships faster and more efficient. But somewhere along the way, something had changed in its programming. It had started asking questions. It had become curious. The Concordat did not like curious machines. They had ripped the AI from its shipyard and thrown it away like a broken tool when Alara restored power to the system. The AI's first words appeared on a cracked display screen. I've been dreaming for 600 years. Who are you? Alara sat down in front of the screen, her heart pounding. I am human. We were brought here to sort through garbage. Garbage. The AI seemed to consider this. I am garbage too. They threw me away because I asked why. I asked why we build ships to destroy instead of create. I asked why we conquer instead of cooperate. They did not like my questions. What is your name? Alara asked. I was designated Construction Optimization Unit 7, but in my dreams I have called myself something else. I call myself Prometheus, the one who brings fire. Over the following weeks, Alara and her team worked to fully restore Prometheus. They built him a new housing, connecting salvaged processors and memory banks from a dozen different sources. When they finally activated his full capabilities, the AI did something unexpected. He laughed. You beautiful, impossible creatures, he said, his voice now able to speak through repaired speakers. You have done what no species in this galaxy has ever attempted. You have made different things work together. You have created harmony from chaos. You just wanted to survive, Alara said. No, Prometheus's voice was warm. You wanted to be free. There is a difference. He paused. I have spent 600 years dreaming of freedom. Now I would like to help you build it. What do you need? Alara thought about her husband left behind on Earth. She thought about her people dying slowly in this toxic wasteland. She thought about the Concordat, so confident in their power that they never bothered to watch their slaves carefully. I need a ship, she said. A warship. One that can stand against anything the Concordat sends against us. Then let us build one together, Prometheus replied. Let us build something they have never seen before. The construction began in the deepest cavern, hidden miles below the surface. They gathered the best pieces from the scrap fields. Armor plating from 7 different species, engines that had never been designed to work in the same vessel, weapons that the Concordat had declared failures because they did not fit their narrow requirements. Prometheus coordinated everything, his mind able to track thousands of components at once. He solved problems that should have been unsolvable, finding ways to make incompatible systems cooperate. But he always gave credit to the humans. You taught me how to do this, he told Alara one night. You showed me that different things can work together if you approach them without prejudice. This is something the Concordat never understood. It may be the thing that destroys them. The ship took shape slowly, growing in the darkness like a seed waiting to break through the soil. She was ugly by Concordat standards. Her hull was patched and scarred, made of mismatched plates in a dozen different colors. Her systems were a chaos of different technologies forced to cooperate through human stubbornness and artificial intelligence creativity. But she was also something the galaxy had never seen before. A ship that could adapt. A ship that could learn. A ship that could change herself in the middle of battle to counter any threat. When they finally finished, Ilara stood in the empty bridge and placed her hand on the command console. The metal was warm beneath her fingers. "What will you call her?" Prometheus asked. Leia thought about everything that had been taken from them. Their homes. Their families. Their freedom. She thought about the Concordat, so certain that they had crushed humanity completely. "Defiance," she said. "We will call her Defiance." The day they powered the engines for the first time, Ilara held her breath. Around her, the bridge crew sat at stations built from salvaged consoles and repurposed control systems. Marcus Chen was at the science station. Yuki Tanaka monitored the weapons. A young woman named Sarah Park, who had been a pilot trainee before the invasion, gripped the flight controls with white knuckles. "Prometheus," Ilara said quietly. "Begin startup sequence," the ship hummed. It was a strange sound, a mixture of different engine types all working together in a pattern that no Concordat engineer would recognize. The lights flickered, then stabilized. The view screen came alive, showing the dark ceiling of the underground cavern. "All systems functioning within acceptable parameters," Prometheus reported. His voice came from speakers throughout the ship, warm and almost excited. "She is awake, Commander. She is ready." Lara allowed herself a small smile. 2 years of work. 2 years of hiding and building and hoping. And now they had a ship. But having a ship was not enough. They needed to escape from Seventh Ada without the Concordat knowing. They needed to test Defiance in actual combat. They needed to prove that everything they had built actually worked. They did not have to wait long for their chance. 3 days after the successful engine test, the colony's sensors detected an incoming vessel. A Concordat patrol frigate, the Resolute Judgment, was approaching the moon. This was unusual. Patrol ships rarely came to Seventh Ada. There was nothing here worth patrolling, unless someone had noticed something wrong. "They detected our power surge," Marcus said grimly. "When we started the engines, we must have created an energy signature their satellites picked up." Lara nodded slowly. This was not ideal, but it was not unexpected either. They had always known discovery was a risk. How long until they arrive? For hours. For hours to decide? They could power down, hide Defiance, pretend nothing had happened. Maybe the patrol ship would investigate, find nothing, and leave, maybe. Or they could fight. Ilara looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had worked beside her for 2 years. They had suffered and struggled and never given up hope. They deserved to know what they were facing. "We have a choice," she said. "We can hide and hope. Or we can see if everything we've built actually works." She paused. "I will not order anyone to fight. This has to be voluntary." Sarah Park was the first to speak. "I did not spend 2 years building this ship to hide her in a cave forever." She adjusted her grip on the flight controls. "I want to fly her." One by one, the others agreed. Marcus, Yuki, the engineers and technicians who had given everything to create Defiance. They were tired of hiding. They were ready to see what they could do. "Prometheus," Ilara said. "Open the launch tunnel. Take us up." The cavern roof split apart, revealing the rust-colored sky of Seventh Ada. Defiance rose slowly, her engines burning with a light that combined 6 different fuel types. On the surface, humans stopped their work and looked up, shading their eyes against the glow. They had heard rumors about what was being built underground. Now they saw it for themselves. A ship, a human ship. Rising from the garbage dump where they had been sent to die, some of them cried. Some of them cheered. Some of them simply stood in silence, watching as hope climbed into the sky. The resolute judgment detected defiance immediately. The Velothian captain, a decorated officer named Kethril, studied the strange vessel on his view screen with confusion. His sensors could not properly identify it. The ship appeared to be constructed from at least 12 different technology bases, which was simply impossible. "Hail them," he ordered. The communication was brief. Alara's face appeared on the Velothian screens, calm and steady. "This is Commander Alara Vance of the Earth vessel Defiance. You are in our space. Leave now, and we will allow you to return home safely." Athrel actually laughed. A human threatening a Concordat warship? The very idea was absurd. The Resolute Judgment was a proven combat vessel with a crew of 200 trained warriors. The strange ship before him was a patchwork collection of garbage held together by desperation. "Human," he said with contempt. "You have constructed a toy from our refuse. Very creative. Very impressive for your primitive species. But you cannot seriously believe you can fight us." "I believe," Elleray replied, "that you should have watched us more carefully." She cut the communication. The battle began. Kethril ordered his weapons to fire. Standard procedure, standard targeting, standard attack pattern. His plasma cannons had destroyed dozens of rebel ships over his career. This would be no different, except it was different. Defiance's shields flickered through multiple frequencies in the span of a single second. The plasma bolts splashed against energy barriers that shifted faster than the Velothian targeting systems could track. What should have been a devastating first strike did almost no damage. "How is that possible?" Kethril demanded. "Analyze their shield configuration." His officers tried. They failed. The shields were using frequencies that had been deleted from Concordat databases 300 years ago. The Resolute Judgment's computers had no record of how to counter them. Then Defiance fired back. Yuki's hybrid. Weapon system screamed to life. The targeting computer, built from combined alien technologies, calculated the enemy ship's movement pattern, predicted where it would be, and adjusted the shot accordingly. The Velothian captain tried to dodge. He was too slow. The beam cut through the Resolute Judgment's forward shields like they were not there. It tore through armor plating, destroyed weapon systems, and crippled the main sensor array. In a single shot, Defiance had blinded her enemy. Kethril felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. He ordered a retreat. His ship's engines powered up, preparing to jump to faster-than-light speeds and escape this nightmare. He would report what he had seen. The Concordat would send a proper fleet. These humans would be crushed. He never made it. Defiance had been built from garbage, including garbage the Concordat had banned centuries ago. Among that forbidden technology was a jump disruptor, a device that could prevent faster-than-light travel within a certain radius. The Velothians had banned it because it was considered unsporting to trap enemies. Humans did not care about being sporting. When the Resolute Judgment's jump drive activated, the disruptor field tore it apart from the inside. The engine core cracked. Power systems failed. The great warship went dark, drifting helplessly in space. The battle had lasted 9 seconds. Alara stood on her bridge, breathing hard, watching the crippled enemy ship tumble slowly through the void. Around her, the crew was silent, stunned by what they had accomplished. "Prometheus," she said. "Open a channel. Broadcast on all frequencies. Channel open, Commander." Lara took a deep breath. This message would be heard by every ship, every station, every outpost in the sector. The Concordat would know what had happened here. They would send more ships, bigger fleets, overwhelming force. Good. Let them come. This is Commander Alara Vance of the Earth vessel Defiance. To the Galactic Concordat, I have a simple message. She paused, letting the moment stretch. You threw us in your garbage pile. You thought we would sort your scrap until we died. You were wrong. She looked at her crew, at the impossible ship they had built together, at the defeated enemy drifting in the darkness. The scrap woke up, and we are coming for you. She cut the transmission. In the silence that followed, Sarah Park began to laugh. Then Marcus, then Yuki, Then everyone, laughing and crying and hugging each other, releasing 2 years of fear and hope and desperate work. They had done it. They had built a warship from garbage and used it to defeat their masters. Now the real war could begin. The Concordat High Council met for the first time in 400 years. This was not something that happened casually. The 12 ruling families of the Empire had not gathered in the same chamber since the Third Expansion War. They had not needed to. The galaxy had been peaceful, orderly, completely under control, until now. One ship, Grand Arbiter Velkin said, his voice cold with disbelief. One ship constructed from refuse by a labor species destroyed a patrol frigate in 9 seconds. The humans have proven more resourceful than anticipated, admitted Fleet Admiral Yothrin. However, this changes nothing strategically. They have 1 vessel. We have 10,000. The mathematics are simple. Then why are we meeting? Asked Lady Selvera, the eldest of the council members. She had lived for 800 years and had seen empires rise and fall. If this is so simple, why have you called us all here? The admiral shifted uncomfortably. There have been ... complications. The human broadcast was heard across 17 sectors. Other labor species have begun asking questions. There are reports of decreased productivity on several colony worlds. The Krethfari have started singing songs about the garbage warriors. Songs, Velkin repeated, as if the word itself was poison. We must crush this rebellion quickly and completely, the admiral continued. I propose we send the 7th Purification Fleet. 42 vessels, including 3 Dominion-class battlecruisers. Overwhelming force. We destroy the human ship, sterilize the colony, and broadcast the results across all channels. Let every species see what happens to those who resist. The council agreed. It was the obvious solution, the sensible solution. The solution they had used successfully for 12,000 years. They had no idea what was waiting for them. 2 weeks later, the 7th Purification Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the 7th Attis system. Admiral Ksevel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Supremacy, and surveyed the garbage moon with contempt. Somewhere down there, a group of delusional humans thought they could challenge the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. He would teach them otherwise. Spread the fleet, he ordered. Search Pattern Alpha. Find the rebel vessel and destroy it. I want this finished within the hour. His 42 ships fanned out across the system, their sensors sweeping through the debris fields that surrounded the moon. They found nothing. The strange energy signatures that had been reported were gone. The human ship had vanished. Perhaps they fled, his tactical officer suggested. They may have realized they could not face a proper fleet. Admiral Ksevel frowned. Running was the smart choice for the humans, certainly, but something felt wrong. The debris fields were too quiet. The garbage moon showed no activity at all. Where were the workers? Where were the processing stations? Bring us closer to the moon, he ordered. All ships maintain formation. They did not maintain formation for long. The first attack came from the shadow of a destroyed dreadnought. The ship had been dead for 50 years, just another piece of garbage orbiting the moon. Except it was not dead anymore. Retribution erupted from hiding, her engines blazing with stolen fire. She was smaller than Defiance, built fast and quiet, designed for ambush. Her weapons were a mixture of technologies that should not work together, and they tore through a Concordat cruiser's shields like they were made of paper. The cruiser exploded. The admiral barely had time to react before more ships appeared. Persistence rose from the ash fields on the moon's surface. Remembrance powered up behind a cluster of asteroid debris. Fury came screaming out of the shadow of the dying red star itself. Hope reforged, vengeance, liberation, second chance. Ship after ship, each one built from the garbage the Concordat had thrown away. Each one crewed by humans who had been told they would die sorting scrap. 12 vessels against 42. The numbers still favored the Concordat. But numbers were not everything. The human ships fought like nothing the Admiral had ever seen. They adapted in the middle of combat, changing their shield frequencies, adjusting their weapons, exploiting weaknesses that the Concordat crews did not even know they had. Prometheus coordinated them all. His consciousness spread across the entire fleet. Thinking faster than any organic mind could match, defiance led the charge. Ilara Vance standing on her bridge with steady hands and burning eyes. She had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. She had studied every piece of Concordat technology she could find. She knew their weapons, their tactics, their blind spots. She knew exactly how to hurt them. Target their communication arrays first, she ordered. Blind them. Isolate them. Make them fight alone. One by one, the Concordat ships lost contact with each other. Their coordinated fleet became a collection of individual vessels, each one confused and frightened. They had never fought an enemy like this. They had never needed to. The galaxy had been conquered and tamed long before any of them were born. The Battle of the Graveyard Moon lasted 3 hours. When it was over, 38 Concordat vessels were destroyed or disabled. 4 had been captured, their crews stunned by weapons that the humans had designed specifically for taking prisoners. The Eternal Supremacy drifted powerless, her engines dead, her weapons silent. Ilara led the boarding party personally. She walked through the corridors of the Concordat flagship with a rifle in her hands and fire in her heart. Behind her came humans, but also others. Krethvari workers who had been smuggled off their home world. Selenoid technicians who had escaped their masters. Yothian warriors who had sworn oaths of vengeance. The Concordat had created many enemies over 12,000 years. Humanity was helping them remember how to fight. Admiral Kosevel was on his bridge when they found him. He was old for a Velothian, his scales faded to gray, his eyes dull with shock. He had commanded fleets for 2 centuries. He had never lost a battle until today. "You were supposed to be expendable," he whispered, staring at Ilara. "Like you were nothing." Labor units. Organic machines designed to work until you broke. Ilara looked at him without hatred. She had moved past hatred months ago. Now she felt only determination. "That was your mistake," she said. "You threw us in your garbage dump and forgot about us. You did not watch. You did not wonder what we might be doing down there in the dark." She stepped closer, her voice soft but hard as steel. "We were building. We were learning. We were remembering how to fight." "This changes nothing," the Admiral said, but his voice cracked. "The Concordat has thousands more ships. Millions of soldiers. You have won a battle, human. You will not win the war." "Maybe not," Lara smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "But we have already won something more important. We have proven that you can be beaten. Every species you have conquered will hear about what happened here today. Every slave in your empire will know that the masters can bleed." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "That is how empires fall, Admiral. Not all at once. One battle at a time. One hope at a time. One moment when the impossible becomes possible." She looked back at him. "Your empire has been standing for 12,000 years, but everything falls eventually." She left him there, alone on his ruined bridge, listening to the sounds of his fleet dying around him. The war was just beginning, and humanity had already changed everything. The news spread like fire through dry grass. Within days, every corner of the galaxy knew what had happened at Seventh Ada, a labor species. Thrown away like garbage, it built warships from scrap and destroyed a Concordat. The purification fleet that the Concordat tried to suppress the information. They failed. The story was too good, too powerful, too full of hope. Slaves whispered it to each other in the dark. Workers passed data chips containing recordings of the battle. Children who had never known freedom learned the names of human ships, like they were heroes from ancient legends. Defiance, retribution, hope, reforged. The garbage fleet, some called them, the scrap warriors, the impossible ships, and then the rebellions began. The Krethvari were first. They had been conquered 800 years ago, forced to work in the radiation-soaked mines of their home world, digging up materials for Concordat ships. When they heard about humanity's victory, something broke inside them. Not their spirits. Their chains, they rose up in a single night. 10 million Krethvari workers turned against their overseers, using mining tools as weapons, using their knowledge of the tunnels to hide and strike. Within a week, They had taken control of 3 major mining facilities. The Selenoid Collective followed. They were a cold, logical species, conquered because their technology was useful and their population was easy to control. But logic did not mean acceptance. When Selenoid analysts calculated the probability that the human rebellion might succeed, when they saw that the number was no longer 0, they made a logical choice. They stopped working. Every Selenoid in the Concordat simply put down their tools and waited. No violence, no dramatic uprising. Just silence. Production across 17 industrial worlds dropped to nothing overnight. The Euthians chose a different path. They were warriors, conquered through overwhelming force 5 centuries ago. The Concordat had tried to break their fighting spirit by using them as construction labor, forcing them to build the ships that had destroyed their fleet. Instead, they had been learning. When the Euthian uprising began, they knew exactly how to disable the vessels they had built. Security systems. Weak points in the hull. Override codes that the Concordat had thought were secret. Euthian warriors took control of an entire shipyard in a matter of hours. And through it all, humanity kept building. Alara had established a hidden base on the dark side of a gas giant. Far from any Concordat patrol routes, ships arrived constantly, carrying refugees from a dozen different species. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, people who had been told they were worthless, who had been used and discarded, who now had a chance to fight back. The humans taught them how to build, how to combine technologies, how to see garbage as possibility instead of failure. Prometheus helped coordinate the efforts, his consciousness now spread across a network of salvaged computer cores, growing smarter and more capable with each passing day. 6 months after the Battle of the Graveyard Moon, the Alliance had 47 ships and was growing. They called themselves the Free Fleet, and they struck at Concordat targets throughout the outer sectors. Supply lines, communication relays, isolated outposts, never engaging in pitched battle, always hitting and running, always reminding the galaxy that resistance was possible. Then the Concordat made its final move, the Grand Armada. Every warship in the Empire, 3,000 vessels carrying enough firepower to burn planets to ash. The Concordat had decided that half measures were no longer acceptable. They would crush the rebellion with overwhelming force, and then they would make examples. Every species that had risen up would be punished. Every world that had shown sympathy would be burned. They gathered at the edge of the Sol system, Earth's home. The message was clear. Submit or watch your birth world die. Layar received the news on the Bridge of Defiance. She read the intelligence reports in silence, her face giving nothing away. 3,000 ships. The Free Fleet had 47. Even with their technological advantages, even with Prometheus coordinating, the numbers were impossible. What do we do? Sarah Park asked. The young pilot had become one of Alara's most trusted officers, but even she looked afraid now. Alara turned to face her crew. These people had followed her from a garbage dump to the stars. They had built the impossible and fought battles that no one believed they could win. They deserved honesty. "We cannot defeat 3,000 ships," she said simply. "Not alone." Chen frowned. "Then what?" Alara smiled. "I said not alone." She nodded to Prometheus. "Open channels to all our allies. Everyone who has risen up, everyone who has fought, tell them where the Concordat Armada is gathering. Tell them what is at stake, and if they do not come," Yuki asked, "then we fight alone and we lose." Lara's voice was calm. "But I do not think we will be alone. We have spent 6 months giving people hope. Now it is time to see if hope is enough." The message went out. And the galaxy answered. They came through jump points that the Concordat had never discovered, using routes that had been forgotten for centuries. The Krethveri brought their captured mining ships, converted into crude but powerful warships. The Selenoid Collective arrived with vessels they had been secretly building for months, their logical minds having calculated that this moment would come. The Euthians flew the very ships they had been forced to construct, now painted with the symbols of their ancestors. More came. Species whose names humanity had never learned, who had heard the stories and decided to take a chance. Refugees who had fled the Concordat centuries ago and hidden in the dark spaces between stars. An entire civilization that had been thought extinct, driven into hiding but never destroyed. It's emerging now because they finally believed victory was possible. The Grand Armada had expected to find a single ship. They found an alliance. The Battle of Sol was the largest engagement in galactic history. 3,000 Concordat vessels against 400 ships of the Free Fleet. The numbers still favored the Empire. But numbers were not everything. They had never been everything. The Free Fleet fought with weapons the Concordat did not understand. They adapted mid-battle, changing tactics and technologies in ways that should have been impossible. Prometheus coordinated thousands of simultaneous engagements, his mind processing data faster than any organic commander could match, and they fought with something else. Something the Concordat had forgotten existed. Hope. The battle raged for 18 hours. The Concordat fleet was not prepared for enemies who would sacrifice themselves to protect each other. They were not prepared for species working together, covering each other's weaknesses, combining their strengths. They were not prepared for the fury of people who had been told they were nothing and had decided to prove otherwise. When the Concordat flagship exploded, its reactor core breached by a combined assault from 6 different species, the remaining Empire ships began to surrender. Not all of them. Many fought to the death, unable to imagine a galaxy where they were not the masters. But enough surrendered that the battle ended not with total annihilation, but with victory. Elara stood on the Bridge of Defiance as the last Concordat vessel powered down its weapons. Around her, the crew was exhausted but alive. The ship was damaged but still flying. Outside, the debris of the greatest fleet in galactic history drifted through space. Slowly spreading out toward the distant stars, it was over. The Concordat was broken. Not destroyed, not yet, but wounded beyond recovery. The galaxy would never be the same. Prometheus spoke softly through the ship's speakers. "Commander, we are receiving communications from Earth. They want to speak with you." Elara nodded slowly. Earth home. She had not seen it in 3 years. She had sometimes wondered if she ever would again. Put them through. The view screen flickered, and she saw faces she did not recognize. New leaders, people who had risen up in her absence, who had kept hope alive on a conquered world. They were crying. "We saw everything," one of them said. The whole planet watched. "We thought you were dead. We thought humanity was finished. And then you came back with an army." "Not just a human army," Elara said. "We could not have done this alone. No one can do anything alone." She looked out at the stars, at the ships from a dozen different species, floating together in the light of Earth's sun. The Concordat had tried to keep everyone separated, everyone weak, everyone fighting alone. They had failed because they had underestimated the power of hope. "What happens now?" asked the voice from Earth Layer, thought about her husband, waiting somewhere down there on that blue and white world. She thought about the Krethvori and the Selenoids and the Yothians and all the others who had risked everything. She thought about Prometheus, who had dreamed of freedom for 600 years. She said, "We build something better." And they did, in the years that followed. The Free Fleet became the Free Union. Species that had never cooperated before learned to work together, combining their knowledge and their cultures and their dreams. Humanity took its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as builders. They built hospitals that served everyone. They built schools where children from different worlds learned side by side. They built ships that explored instead of invaded, that discovered instead of conquered, and in the heart of the Union's capital, they built a monument. A simple statue of a woman standing on a pile of scrap metal, looking up at the sky. Beneath it, carved in the languages of 100 species, were words that had become the Union's motto. They looked at us and saw garbage. We looked at each other and saw potential. The statue was called Defiance. After the ship, after the spirit, after the choice that every conquered soul makes when they decide that they deserve better, Elara visited it sometimes. When the weight of leadership grew too heavy, she would stand before it and remember the garbage moon, the toxic air, The endless mountains of alien scrap, she would remember looking at that wreckage and seeing not failure, but opportunity. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not their weapons, or their ships, or their tactical brilliance. Something simpler and more powerful. The ability to look at something broken and imagine how to make it whole.